What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about the Immortals of Aveum news that's going around online. I think it's honestly pretty important. I think I've got something to say. And the center of our topic and what you see, from the title, wrong lessons. The wrong lessons are being spouted. Now, here's the deal. We're going to go over exactly what happened here. But these are developers, and I believe one was a past developer. They're not even there anymore. And then I believe one actually still works at the team, okay? And they issued, a statement, or IGN was talking to them for a story, and they talked about basically the failure that was Immortals of Aveum. Now, I want to start off by saying I never played the game. It always looked interesting, but it was a full price. I think it was a $70 game. Came out right around that Baldur's Gate, Starfield, that August, September period, which is important. And it's what the developer just doesn't even, care to say out loud. And that is one problem I have with it. But it was just a game I skipped. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll get it on sale. It did actually go on sale pretty soon after. I think you could have picked it up for $30, $40. But since then, I think like the head of the team, or the person who runs it, has publicly said they are looking to put it on both Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. And it sounded kind of definitive, like it was going to happen. So I'll tell you this, even what we're about to talk about, to throw on another thing, why didn't the game do that well? Well, maybe it's because 2-3 months later, they were talking about putting it on both big subscription services, which would cut sales massively. You know what I mean? And you don't do that, I'd say, so close to the game and then expect the game to sell. So what was the line? Okay, let's read the line that this former developer had said. So at a high level, Immortals was massively overscoped for a studio's debut project. The development cost was around $85 million, and I think EA kicked in $40 million for marketing and distribution. They went on to explain that while the studio did have skilled developers, Immortals of Aveum just wasn't a good idea in today's gaming climate. There are many factors going against it, such as its genre and bloated campaign, according to the dev. Sure, there was serious talent on the development team, but trying to make a AAA single-player shooter in today's market was a truly awful idea, and especially since it was a new IP that was also trying to leverage Unreal Engine 5. Current employee chimed in with a different perspective, saying that it simply didn't find an audience. It's not a sequel or a remake. It doesn't take 400 hours to beat, has zero microtransactions, no pointless open world grinding. Although not everyone loved it, it reviewed pretty well, currently sitting at 84 on OpenCritic and mostly positive on Steam. No one bought it. So that second person, I agree with, quite heavily. Now, I would say this, right? From somebody who did not play the game, it just came out in a bad time for me. People that did play the game talked about it didn't really have like a standout thing. Like watching the trailers and stuff, it looks like a mix of like a Doctor Strange mixed with like Doom, but it seemed like from people that played it, it's a middling game, right? This is a middling game. And so the question is, okay, well, why did it fail, right? Now, I think the first developer, the beginning of it, I'm fine with. I agree with what they were saying earlier on, but I really think they lost the point, as they kept talking, because here's the thing. I think games can work. I think it's not necessarily just one thing or another, but it's certainly not, hey, you can't make a AAA shooter. Like, that's just not going to work nowadays. No. In fact, the beginning of what that person said, that maybe is the biggest thing. If this was a middling first game in a franchise, it's attempting it, it's the debut game from a studio. If it sold, say, 500,000 or 1 million, right? If the game costs $20 million to make, guess what? That actually would kind of be a success. You could build off of that. The issue, as we've said, and we talked about this with the Insomniac lease, we said this over and over, and it's becoming a bigger problem, not just with Sony, but with everybody, is the money. And the developers said that in the beginning. Now, I guess I'm afraid of a few different things, right? We have talked about that money aspect where you can't really try anything in modern gaming. When you're a developer, you're a publisher, you got to go with safe bets. In fact, the second developer kind of said it. Microtransactions, bloated world, 400 hours. Maybe not the bloated part, but some things are like the taglines. Spend 150 hours in our game. That gets people. If you have an 8-hour game, which I think like the average for this game is only like 8, 10, 12 hours, right? So this is not a massive game, and it should never... because it's not a massive game and because it doesn't have multiplayer and it doesn't have microtransactions, doesn't have any of this stuff, should it cost $120 million to make? Now, again, EA made it get to that amount, but even $85 million. $85 million. You know, the reports for, say, I think it was Like a Dragon, maybe, the Yakuza, which was the last game, not Infinite Wealth. One of the last couple Yakuza games, I think the budget was like $21 million. That is insane. That's insane. You've got to start to figure out a way to use money smarter. I mean, and I think Sony's CEO actually said that today in like the earnings call, that the first party studios need to learn how to spend the money kind of wisely. And you know what? I don't really disagree. I guess it depends on who is spending the money, like whose blame is it, literally. But that is a big issue, because, I mean, I stand on that. Even if the game is middling, if you sell 1 million units, which, is nothing to write home about, I guess, but you know what? If it was a small thing, like cost very little money, and it is the debut game, and they're going for it, right? Say they're really trying to make this big, epic kind of game. If it sells 1 million, if your budget is 10, 20, 30 million, it's not a big deal. You can absorb that. I think they had to lay off like half the team after this game came out. So maybe it's not a massive success, say even if it sells 1 million, but maybe you don't have to fire half the team. Maybe you don't, I don't think the team's going to get another try, right, to do another AAA game. So that's the money element to it. My fear, now, like the first developer, they're not there. I think they said some okay stuff, but again, I think they kind of lost it after that. My worry is actually on how EA sees this. Now, maybe not even just EA. This is another issue. When these companies see these failures, what do they blame it on? What do they blame it on? Because here's the thing, and neither of them mentioned this, right? Actually, neither mentioned this. I did. The release window. That is a big deal. Again, smaller game, smaller game in terms of like under the radar, new thing, but it's like he said, it's not a remake, it's not a sequel to it, like say a trilogy or something, right? New game. Okay, if you're not standing out all that well, which really this game didn't do, right? You need to put it out at the best time you possibly can. Now look, there's hundreds of games that release a year. I know this better than most, right? Hundreds of games. Every month you're gonna have some sort of competition, right? It is hard. It is hard to avoid, but there are some times that you can. And this game came out right before another single player, and I guess you could do co-op, Baldur's Gate, Starfield, and they mentioned shooters. There's you can be a shooter that's kind of under the radar and still be successful. Now, not everyone. I saw some people posting on Twitter. I think it was actually a former Rocksteady employee posted about Vanquish, the long forgotten, I think 2010 maybe game, which is incredible. I actually own that game physically. Fantastic game. And yeah, that's a shooter. It's a third-person shooter. It didn't sell. So yes, you're not guaranteed. You're not guaranteed to sell. But again, to not say that part, I think is actually alarming. And again, what worries me is not necessarily what these two think about it, right? Because they're not really decision makers, to be honest. It's the higher ups. So remember when EA talked about like single player games are dead, right? Like nobody buys them, nobody cares about them, and they pivoted and they ruined BioWare, and they rely on their sports franchises that are abysmal, right? We remember that, right? In fact, some of that stuff is still happening, like sports franchises. Battlefield needs to prove itself. I wouldn't say it's had its redemption yet, right? We just did that. We just did that with EA, but like that's a past example. When they see something like this, I do actually get worried, because it's like all the things about it, despite its middling opinion and middling reviews, the qualities of it, single player, right? Single player, AAA, first person, right? First person shooter, doesn't have microtransactions, it doesn't have multiplayer, it doesn't have DLC. Okay, so like those like things, those actual features, let's say, about the game, they are actually strong, and like I actually do want these games to release, and I think they can stand a chance. Again, are all of them going to succeed? No. I get worried that EA looks at that and starts blaming the wrong things. And the developers are already a little scary, because it almost seems like they're throwing under the bus the shooting part. The fact that it's a first-person shooter, it's a different kind of first-person shooter, that you can't make those games. It actually, didn't one of them literally say that? You can't make a first-person shooter like in this climate. That's not true. That's not true. There's other factors. In fact, the two main factors, I would say, is managing that budget better and the release window. Now, I mean, you could disagree, right? I would say, I mean, you could also do a third thing. If the game stood out more, now I'm not going to like go after talent and stuff. I thought this game looked pretty solid. Again, it was, for me, literally my own reasoning why I didn't get it was the release window. $70 too. It's like, well, I'd almost put that like with it. You know what I mean? It comes out around these other games that are also expensive. I knew I was going to buy them. You only have so much money. Do you really want to, take a chance? And then that did hurt it. Now, but here's the thing. If you put it out in a month where there's no game, right? Or a month where there's 2 games to fight against versus 5, or versus, say, like a Baldur's Gate, like a really big game, right? Again, like, I understand it's difficult, but say you put it somewhere else. Someone like me who has that conundrum, okay, am I going to spend money here, spend money there? You might not have that conundrum, and then maybe you try out the game. Maybe you don't, but maybe you do, and maybe you can get an extra couple tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to buy the game just from switching the date. Again, it's not going to maybe sell millions. It's not going to completely reverse, its destiny, but it can absolutely help. And that's just changing the date. What about spending the money wiser? What about, like, can you cut the budget in half? If you cut the budget in half, then you need half as many sales in order for it to be successful. You didn't say that. You didn't do that. So that's what I worry about. Not just that these 2 developers don't really seem to like understand that. At least from what IGN said. Maybe they do, and they just didn't say it. But it doesn't seem like they get it. And then also, it matters the people in charge. I pray to God, truly, that the people in charge don't look at it the same way. Oh, we can never make a different kind of first-person shooter again. Like, the genre is Battlefield, and it's COD, and it's these games. Only the games that sell 5 to 10 million, those are the only games that are successful. You can never make a first-person shooter, even if it sells 1 or 2 million, not successful. Like, you know what I mean? It's the mindset. What are these people's mindset? Because with this specific example and specific company, you had them literally kill their single-player department or like mindset. They murdered that in broad daylight. They announced it publicly because of other things that happened that they did themselves, and then they blamed other factors. And that's what these people, again, maybe not these developers, but that's what these higher ups do. They create a problem, they look at the problem, they recognize it is a problem, but they blame the wrong thing, and then they course correct, but they course correct wrong, right? And that's who we're dealing with here. So again, it's one situation, it's one game. I do understand that, but I do get worried because all the time, like, it's not just a flash in the pan. Is that the saying? Square Enix, right? What did you have? Square Enix. Square Enix has a bunch of failures. They have a couple successes, and what did they just say like 2 weeks ago? We're focusing on basically the ones we have full confidence in, right? That's what they said, that they're going more mainstream. So the Final Fantasies, the Kingdom Hearts, like, those are safe, but anything that's like kind of a risk, no more. Sony has done a very, very similar thing. Xbox has talked like they're going to do it, and then they haven't really done it yet, right? So that's not me making it up. That's not just one game. That's not just one example. That right there, that was like 3 different situations, right? That is what I get worried about, because when you have one of these things go wrong, they cause the problem, they look at the problem, they say, oh, it's because of the genre, isn't it? It's because it's single player. If it was multiplayer, it would have done better. Oh my God. No. If the budget's less, if it comes out at a better time, maybe if it's a little bit more innovative in some ways, maybe then it does better. Not what you're saying. So that is the situation that I think we're in. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.